We've got some breaking news right now in Robert Mueller's investigation about why he may be at least partly focused on President Trump's Twitter feed. The New York Times reporting now the special counsel is scrutinizing tweets and negative statements from the president about Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the former FBI director, James Comey. This is according to 3 people briefed on the matter. Several of the remarks came as Mr. Trump was also privately pressuring the men, both key witnesses in the inquiry, about the investigation. And Mr. Mueller is examining whether the actions add up to attempts to obstruct the investigation by both intimidating witnesses and pressuring senior law enforcement officials to tamp down the inquiry. Again, this is coming from the New York Times. The reporter who broke this story joins me now, Michael Schmidt from the Times. Jill Wine-Banks is also with me, former assistant Watergate special prosecutor. Michael, let me start with you. It's your reporting here, your exclusive reporting along with Maggie Haberman. What more can you tell us?
Well, most times that people are accused of obstructing justice, it's things that happen in private. It's pressuring witnesses. It's making threats against folks to try and stop them from speaking. What's unusual here, what's different, is that the president has made so many public statements about the investigation, about the former FBI director James Comey, about Attorney General Jeff Sessions, things that could be construed as trying to influence them. Now, if you line up his public statements with what he's accused of doing privately, you can see where the president may have been trying to move these guys in different directions as it relates to the investigation, trying to get them to do things that he wanted. Remember, the president is accused of asking the FBI director to end the investigation into his former national security advisor, Mike Flynn. The president is accused of trying to get Comey to put out the word that he's not under investigation. The day after Comey essentially says, I'm not going to say that publicly, the president goes out for the first time and raises questions about Comey's job in an interview on Fox Business.
What, if anything, is the White House or the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, what is he saying about all of this, if anything?
Well, they say that the president should be able to do what he needs to do politically to defend himself from these attacks. He's under 24/7 political siege, and he needs to have his Twitter account to push back on them, to push his own narrative. He has a First Amendment right like anyone else, and he should be able to do that as the chief executive. He should be able to say what he wants about an ongoing investigation or about witnesses or folks that are running the investigation.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.